Okay, good morning. Welcome back to the second day of this workshop. I think I would like to start really to thank our organizer, really, because yesterday, all the organization and the dinner was extremely well organized, very good quality and very comfortable because it's on the same site. So really, thank you very much for all the effort and all the organization that you made. So today we start the second day, the second session, but before, I would like to give the floor to Marek because he will give us some logistic information, and just after that we will start the official session.
Good morning. Thank you, Jose Luis. Good morning, everyone. Today, the day is a little bit more complicated than it was yesterday. So hence the announcement. So we finish this session at 1 o'clock, then there is a lunch. And at 2 o'clock, there is a panel, which has been organized by the director of Solaris, Jakub Szlachetko, and everyone is invited. It will take place in this room, and it will finish at more or less at 4 o'clock. And then the complications, they start. Some of you probably, some of you have registered for trip to Czartoryski Museum. Some have registered to trip to Jagiellonian University Museum. Both museums are very attractive, at least this is my opinion. And the third, the most attractive option was to visit to Solaris. So this is how it goes. So people going to musea, there will be guides here. They will have, let's say, boards in hands. So Czartoryski Museum, Jagiellonian University. To Solaris, there will be a bus. It will take us something between 15 minutes to half an hour to get to Solaris. And then some people are engaged in business meetings. ESFRI business meetings, but the rest will be visiting Solaris, and then there will be, after this, let's say, part of the day, there will be transport back by bus to close to the restaurant, because there is a dinner for ESFRI Forum members in the evening, and it is in the restaurant. So please, ESFRI Forum members, please, if you don't go to Solaris, just make sure you know where Hotel Pod Wawelem is, because it is in the restaurant. Hotel Pod Wawelem, check with with my colleagues at the reception desks. So this is more or less the rest. Obviously, non-ESFRI Forum members they have free evening, so they can enjoy Kraków. Weather should be okay. Maybe we'll have some rain now in 1 hour, but this will be very short rain. And then it is nice weather, a little bit cold, which might be good actually. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are set for the logistic. So now we start with the session. Session 2, the title is Synergies from Different Funding Sources. So a little of the idea, of course, the organization will be similar to yesterday. That will be a keynote presentation, actually with a recorded speech from the Ministry of Finance from Poland, who was planned to be here until last Friday, but probably, because of the political situation, he has to be today in the parliament in Poland, because it's a very important voting process today. And so he recorded the message. So really, we appreciate very much the effort that the Ministry of Finance, who quite a lot of knowledge, I will say, about the founding, will be present in some statement in the recorded way. So we are really appreciated much. After that will be a panel with the discussion. And after that, we also go to breakout session, absolutely similar to yesterday. There will be 5 with the different colors. My guess is that will be the same places as yesterday, the colors, I mean. And after that, we will wrap up at the end of the day, let's say before 1 o'clock. So let's start the process of this session 2. And the keynote speaker will be now in a second will be Alan Wick. So I will try to present Alan Wick. So we know each other from a few years ago. He has been working in many different research or a few research infrastructure of the ESFRI roadmap. So he has really very good experience about the different types. But today he is the director of the ELI, Eric. So ELI, you know, is a two-site, today is two-site, probably in the future 3 sites, but today is a 2-site research infrastructure seated in Czech Republic, near Prague, and the second one in Hungary, in a city called Szeged, that we have the pleasure to have a meeting of the ESFRI Forum meeting last year. It was really very, and we visited that place. A few years ago, I visited the other site but with the opening of the facility in the Czech Republic was really very interesting. So Alan, of course, and Ellie, I think is a good example how to mix and collaborate or join together different funding sources. So yesterday was mostly focused about industry in the sense that we try to get, I will say, extra budget from other sources. Today, extra budget in the sense of not only public budget. Today, I think most of the focus will be how to mix different, let's say, public funding. Because, of course, at least in Europe, we have different sources from different ministry, from different scopes. Of course, very typical, the structural funds. And I think ELI is one of the examples that if you use this kind of mixing different funding sources in a wise manner, you are able to achieve a very good result. So please, Alan, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks. Morning, everyone. Good to be here in Kraków. So been coming to Krakow for many, many years. I was thinking last night, the first time that I professionally came to Kraków, I was visiting Jagiellonian University with a colleague of mine, Carlo Bocchetta, and we were meeting this funny little professor from university who had this vision to build a synchrotron in Krakow. This was maybe 2009 or 10, something like that. I met Marek Stankiewicz for the first time and thought, well, that's kind of crazy. They're going to build it using European structural funds. And what was really amazing was they had the idea to build it for 50 million euro, which at the time was like insane. I mean, because even cheap synchrotron was 300 million. So I was like, how are they going to do that? But they had a very innovative idea how to leverage designs that had already been provided by Max 4 and build it here. And I remember Marek was saying that his colleagues were all telling him that no one would come there. And I think they have 7 beamlines now, and users, I think 50% are from outside of Poland even, 50% from inside Poland. Michał Linarczyk, who was doing the administration, he had just finished Matura and finished high school, and Marek had already grabbed him. That was a very nice time to visit, and I'm very happy to see the progress you guys have made. You should definitely visit Solaris, and I think it's a really super example of leveraging different types of funding, and also was actually the first research infrastructure operating in Central Europe since Poland joined the EU. ELI is also an example of a large-scale research infrastructure also located in Central Europe, also using European structural funds to build the facility. We have 2 facilities that are within the ELI ERIC, and then there's a 3rd facility that we hope will join over time, but we already manage a science program together. Thinking back and connecting the dots, the first time that I ever attended an ESFRI meeting was in 2006. It was actually in Ljubljana, and there were some funny people running around at the time. There was John Wood, I think, at the time was maybe the chair, and Carlo Rizzuto was my boss at Elettra, where I was working on Fermi for electron laser. I met this lady named Dr. Beatrix Virkon-Rudolph. She made quite an impression on me the first time I met her, and still does. There was Hans Chang, really interesting. In this group, they were kind of getting together. They were also opinionated. I had no idea what they were talking about because I didn't understand at the time that there wasn't a unified European policy around science. I'm an American. I had only been living in Europe at that time only 15 years, so I didn't really get the fact that this was a new concept at the time. And they had this thing called a roadmap, It was the first one, 2006. And I was flipping through it because Carlo had asked me to read through it, and check the English and stuff like that. And I was looking at it, and there was this one research infrastructure in there called Eli, Extreme Light Infrastructure. And I remember at that time reading the description of it and not understanding anything about it, simply because it was so complicated, because it was really built as 3 different facilities in 3 different locations using structural funds. And it really wasn't a very coordinated project until it came together at the end. But it is actually a very interesting example, and I'll talk more about that, of how things come together. Another thing I remember at that time, and working with Carlo at Elettra, and I had also met a very young and ambitious professor by the name of Giorgio Rossi at the time. He was one of the first guys I met there. And Giorgio will remember that one of the reasons we have ERICs today is because Carlo was so irritated that he had to pay VAT to build Fermi. And he just could not imagine that they had to pay VAT to build a public infrastructure on science. And he got so irritated with that he really made it his mission to change that. And I think he and a few other people really, that was one of the driving forces for why we have ERICs today. I really believe that. Maybe I'm not entirely right, but I think that's the way my story is around it. And today we have the ERIC Forum, which has 30 ERICs. Antia will be moderating the panel in a few minutes, maybe 31 even. They're happening every day now. I'm the vice chair of the forum. I just show up wherever Antia can't be. I go there. And so it's really been a big success. And one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about today when we talk about synchronizing funding, because it's relevant for ERICs, it's relevant for all the ESFRI landmarks. And by the way, just to mention, it's relevant for all the national research infrastructures like Solaris, like DAISY, like Soleil and Elettra, and many others that we don't see that are national research infrastructures, but all have pan-European importance, even if they're mainly financed by their member states. And if you just take a kind of normal product life cycle curve, I'm going to call it the research infrastructure life cycle curve, and there is these phases in life that all of you will remember and recognize who've been involved with research infrastructures. You have the introduction phase, which probably proportionally here is not correct, because that introduction phase is probably much longer. It's not a long tail at the end, it's a long tail at the beginning to get projects up and running. This is usually financed by a number of different combinations, but one thing in Europe, at least, that you try to do very quickly if you want a pan-European research infrastructure is get on the ESFRI roadmap, right? Because that opens the door at least to the preparatory phase funding that you can get through Horizon Europe and through InfraDev and other types of calls under Pillar 1. And that's fairly straightforward procedure that most large research infrastructure, ESFRI research infrastructures and others, ERICs, have kind of gone through. There's also, of course, member funding from the member states, which is very important. But at that stage, it's quite early. It's really about putting together some kind of a design or some kind of a plan. And also the funding very often helps in assembling and putting together the governance of the organization, because you need to have the governance established, probably some kind of legal entity to move into the next phase so that you can receive funding at the next phase, which are usually, again, member direct funding, either through cash or in-kind contributions. You have in some cases, but not all. We should remember European structural funds, especially ERDF funds, they're not everywhere in Europe. They're only in some places of Europe. So when we talk about them as a potential funding mechanism, not every region has ERDF. There are possibilities that cohesion funds or structural funds can be used in one country and then taken to another country and presented as in-kind. That's happened. I mean, I know it happened at the European Spallation Source where I used to work. And so that's possible, but it's not easy. I have to be honest. It's not the best way probably or the easiest path. Of course, Horizon Europe or whatever framework program is in place is again a source of funding, national grants, and then just other. I mean, sometimes it just depends on the situation and the organization where you find other types of grants. In construction, which is typically what we think about a lot of times when we think about the big numbers around research infrastructures, is the construction budgets. Of course, we don't always see the construction budget of distributed infrastructures, right? Because they've been built up over many years or decades in the national nodes, but that's still a large investment. And it may have been an investment that was done in one time in one country, or it may have really been something that accumulated over decades. And then the challenging part for most of us when we talk about sustainability is really when we move into the operations phase. So member direct funding, again, Horizon Europe in different ways, member grants, which are not direct funding, right? Member grants are still competitive funding. So you still have to compete for that, or you still have to apply for that. Maybe foundations or partnerships with intergovernmental organizations is another source of funding. European Space Agency provides funding sometimes, which also can flow down to other research infrastructures. Industry, we talked about that a good bit yesterday. Yes, it's a thing, it's a possibility. It certainly is not the major way of financing research infrastructures in Europe. And then different types of strategic partnerships, which are not exactly members, but they may have some kind of financial contribution. There are more. I'm just kind of riffing on a few of the obvious ones. And then as you move later into the life cycle of the facility, then that's the time where I'm being a little bit facetious here. I'm being a little bit provocative, but typically that's the time when the member state that's hosting it gets stuck with all the cost, all right? Because at that time, no one really wants to fund a research infrastructure that is apparently non-competitive and not excellent and all these kind of things. So what happens then, of course, is you try to stretch out the life cycle of your research infrastructure. You try to push it past obsolescence by upgrading. And then you need a whole nother round. And basically what happens is you start over the life cycle process again with an upgraded facility. So this is not anything that I invented. This is just kind of classic way of looking at product life cycle. But I think it's important, and I know that we do think about it like that. Most everyone here thinks about it like that when you think about your own research infrastructures or the ones that you're in governance for. But it's also true, we don't really have a structured, systematic way of approaching this from a funding point of view, the same way they do, for example, in the US, the same way they do in China, the same way they do in Japan. And that already opens up kind of the rest of the conversation. I'm going to do my best. Peter Levi told me yesterday, he reminded me I only have 8 minutes, and I've already blown through that. But I will just try to move quickly to get us into the conversation that we want to have in just a minute. So I'm not going to make any great discoveries, but I just want to point out that, one of the things that's really influencing our thinking right now is the report written by this man and the team of people that contributed to that. So I don't really have any original thoughts going forward, okay? I'm just pulling out things that are very explicitly written inside the report. I'm sure everyone here has read through the report in great detail, okay? And you probably want to go back and reread it again, because there's some very specific language in there that applies not only to this conversation, but to your lives going forward if you're going to continue to work in this field. I've only cherry-picked out some things, but just to make a point, there's a point in the second document, B, which is the detailed recommendations, where it really talks about root causes of the EU's weak innovation performance, and which, I mean, weak. It's relatively weak. They have qualified that and quantified that relative to other areas of the world, and there were 8 root causes. I only pulled out 4. Obviously, there's the lower private R&D investment, which came up in the discussions yesterday, right? We don't have private equity funding. We don't have heavy R&D investment from industry in Europe. It's just a fact. We don't have that. It's not happening. So that's something, and it's important because it influences the overall landscape. Less effective public R&D spending. This is what was identified. So actually in Europe, we are spending relatively well on public R&D spending. We're percentage-wise, it's a higher percentage than the US or Asia, but we're not effective. We're not reaching the same goals and outcomes, even though proportionally we're spending more. Okay, so why is that? Well, it's what we know. It's a lack of coordination. It's a fragmentation of funding at the European level, and even fragmentation of funding at the national levels, okay? This leads to duplication, missed opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. This fragmentation has a lot of consequences for us that leave us in a situation right now where we're kind of, wondering sometimes why we don't achieve more. On the other hand, everybody understands the nature of the beast. Why is it fragmented? Because Europe is fragmented. Politically, it still is not a federal republic or something like that. It's a loose confederation governed by a treaty, and everyone has one vote, and we have, these are the reasons why it's not easy. So we can sit around and kind of, hit ourselves on the back. Why aren't we doing better at that? But there are real political constraints why it's difficult to be very, very coordinated on everything. And then what was a little bit surprising to me actually in the report, and I really didn't hit home until I started rereading it, was that the Draghi report has really characterized that we have weak academic performance, particularly at the universities, and they quantified that. And that really kind of surprised me, and I think it's important for all of us in research infrastructures because we all know how closely intertwined we are with the universities, because that's really the source of most users are coming from universities. One thing just to point out about the private investment, there's a book recently by a guy named Patrick McGee, which you may have seen on television or podcast or whatever. He's written a book called Apple in China, The Capture of the World's Greatest Company, just to put it in perspective, okay? Because when we talk about how much money we're spending on research infrastructures, okay, we have to be honest with ourselves. So consider the size of Apple's investment in China over a 5-year period, $48 billion every year for 5 years. Just Apple investing in China from 2016 to 2021. Compare that with the European Chips Act, all right, $43 billion. That's not supposed to be a 1-year investment, right? Compare that with Horizon Europe, yep, $95 billion over 7 years, $13.6 billion a year. And compare that with EDRF funding, cohesion funds, big structural funds, right? $226 billion over 7 years. Just Apple, just investing in China. And those are our two biggest competitors if we think about the global setting, right? China and the US. So we have to be honest with ourselves about how much we're investing in this. Research infrastructures, if we take Aeroforum, just Aeroforum, we invest about $11 billion a year in Aeroforum research infrastructures. Take out the European Space Agency and you take out $7.7 billion. So immediately we're down below around $3 billion. Yeah? If you take all the research infrastructures, not national, but the ones that are pan-European in nature, but not Aeroforum, we spend less than $2 billion a year on all of those research infrastructures. It means all the ERICs. It means all the other pan-European national. So really in proportion, you can see we're not there. Simply we're not there. So every other discussion about how efficient we can spend becomes even more important because we're so far behind in what the rest of the world is spending. Not to be Debbie Downer, I'm sorry about that, but we have to be honest with it so that we can have a real conversation. Less effective public spending because public R&D spending in Europe is very fragmented because it's in the member states. And I understand how important member state spending is and how we always talk about, the member states, this and that. Okay, fair enough. But if you look at this graph, what it's telling us is in the US, when it comes to public support for spending, most of it's happening at the federal level. It's not happening at the state level, where in Europe it's the opposite. It's all happening at the member state level. So all of this kind of pan-European budgeting, we're talking about the money that Michael and his team are helping us to get, the other money. I mean, basically Horizon Europe. It's still very small relative to where most of the spending is. It's happening on a national level, which means by definition it's very fragmented. So when we talk about synergies, there's a lot of synergies we have to work on. It's a lot of coordination we have to work on. In terms of the fragmentation of the system, and I'm getting finished, Antia, I'll be just a few more slides, I'll be done. An important factor that we have to think about relative to this fragmentation is directly out of the report. It says very directly in the report, an important factor that would enhance R&I capacity is the availability of world-leading research and technology infrastructure. That's written in the report. And it's even a special recommendation in Part B, Section 2 on page 252. It says, recommendation, invest in the world-leading research and technology infrastructure, increase investments. It's written in the report. So there is a political base for increased investment. I don't appreciate when I'm hearing this, nobody wants to spend more on research. There is, in the Draghi report, clearly written, one of the recommendations is to increase investment into RI, into research infrastructures. So that's there. Not enough academic excellence at the top. This is the one I said surprised me a lot. I mean, just to put it in perspective, because again, universities are the main users of research infrastructures. We can't deny how closely interlinked we are with universities. In the case of Solaris, it's an infrastructure at a university, so it's not even separated. So I think the excellence at the universities, the need for excellence, this is what's pointed out in the Draghi report. We need to maintain scientific excellence to be competitive. So what that means is the mission to be scientifically excellent at research infrastructures is not something we have to compromise. It's not something that we should be debating about what are the different missions of research infrastructures, because clearly we need to be competitive purely in academic excellence. And if we don't do that with the infrastructures that are intended to do that, then we're diluting again the mission, and it becomes very complicated, especially for RI managers like myself, who are trying to compete with these different needs and wants. So the recommendation here is promote academic excellence at world-leading institutions, and they actually have prepared the idea of not only an ERC, but an ERC for institutions, right? So really specifically focused on excellence for institutions. Can't imagine that ESFRI research infrastructures wouldn't be somehow excellent institutions that would qualify in such a way. Okay, so I think in my definition, access equals excellence, because in most cases, we actually have to have excellence. To have access, that's the way it's set up. Of course, we can talk about other models, and we do that at Eli. We're very supportive of industry, work closely with industry, but it's not a compromise. Industry also is searching for excellence, just in different things. They're not doing experiments for the sake of pure discovery. They're doing measurements for the sake of reaching a market and having an excellent product that's innovative, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't mean the people are not excellent there. So I think having access, providing access through the funding mechanisms to the researchers at the universities, to excellent research infrastructures, is the way we have to go. So my final thoughts. The highest leverage thing that Europe can do, now this is my original thought, and it's a little bit provocative, but here we are. Establish a dedicated, centralized, and strategic pan-European RI fund within the new MFF. So there should be something that's not just Pillar 1, where you're giving grants to research institutions on a quasi-competitive basis, but it's really a fund that manages research infrastructures, obviously together with the member states, because the member states are obviously paying for a lot of this. But we want to achieve overcoming the critical mass problem. We need to take advantage of critical mass in Europe. This is something we're wasting the opportunity. We need to enable a real life cycle approach to funding. We need to formalize these missions. If you're going to ask research infrastructures to do more than academic excellence, then we need to formalize that. You need to tell that, write it into the statutes of the organizations, and then fund them for that. We need to think about strengthening the strategic autonomy and global competitiveness. So what this basically means is there are certain things that need to be decided at the European level, because that's what strategy is. If you're going to have strategy, you've got to make decisions what to do, what not to do, and you've got to be able to put resources in one direction. That's practically the definition of strategy. And then the final thing is, in all of this, as we do become a more innovative society, as we do progress up the ladder and we do succeed, which I'm absolutely confident we will, what we'll see, like we see in other regions of Europe, is it will start to concentrate into certain areas. Cities, in the US, there's 3 cities that attract 80% of all the R&D spending, 3 regional metropolitan areas. It's going to concentrate. It's the same in China. We need to be aware how to strategically use cohesion funds to be able to keep a balance in Europe, because we have so many opportunities in places like Poland with 40 million people, with many young, well-educated engineers and scientists who can provide a way forward, because we're missing people simply. We also talked about that yesterday. We've got to take advantage of the full population of the European Union and able to address this. So over 8 minutes, I apologize, but I hope that this set the stage for a good conversation that we can have and for questions going forward. So thank you. We'll have the video, and then Ante, you just take over, yeah? Okay, great.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructure Forum Meetup. And I am really pleased that this meeting is taking place in Poland, in my hometown, in Kraków. And I'm really sorry, and I do regret that I cannot attend this event in person. However, I'm especially pleased that this edition focuses on the sustainable development of the research infrastructure ecosystem, which is a timely and essential topic. The ongoing AI revolution is transforming economies, industries, and research at a pace and scale we've never seen before. But this potential can only be unlocked through robust, purpose-built research infrastructure. We all know that data is the new gold, and that gold must be mined, refined, and protected through the right technological systems. Research infrastructure are not just technological backbones. They are strategic assets. They lie at the heart of Europe's knowledge triangle: research, education, and innovation. That's why Europe must coordinate the development and long-term sustainability of its research infrastructures, especially in data science and high-performance computing. In Poland, we are building a strong and competitive economy by ensuring public funding and motivating private funds to invest in forward-looking technological, including research infrastructure. We agree that the key to high competitiveness in AI is the combined infrastructure of computers with high computing power and data in the internet cloud. We are consistently implementing the European Commission's strategy, which aims to make Europe a global leader in the field of AI. Our country, I believe, plays a key role in the implementations of the European AI Continent Plan, including through investments in AI factories and modern solutions related to quantum technologies. These solutions will be used in science, industry, and the public sector, strengthening Poland's position among the leaders of innovation in Europe. By the way, Kraków is one of the 2 largest supercomputing centers in Poland, home to the most powerful supercomputer, Helios, which is used to create Polish language models such as Bialik and Plum, both highly regarded in Europe. And for the record, another one supercomputing center is located in Poznań, of course. Kraków is also applying to launch an AI factory at the Cyfronet AGH Supercomputing Center. We have secured sufficient funds in the state budget for this purpose. Cyfronet, together with the Poznań Supercomputing Center, will be the pillars of AI development in Poland. Apart from domestic initiatives, we are also one of the participants in the Finnish LUMI Supercomputer Consortium, in which Krakow's Cyfronet is involved. In addition to the 3 quantum computers already in operation in Poland, a 4th computer based on ion trap technology will soon be launched. This year, we have announced the Polish development plan, which is based on 6 pillars: investment in science, energy transformation, modern technologies, development of infrastructure, a dynamic capital market, and comprehensive support for business. We believe that a strong innovation and research infrastructure ecosystem is key to economic resilience. High R&D investment signals both competitiveness and confidence. It's also a marker of long-term national strength. That's why, in cooperation with Polish Development Fund and Polish Development Fund Ventures, we have launched Deep Tech program, which is to invest in breakthrough technologies that have the power to reshape our future, from space innovation and cybersecurity to advanced materials and artificial intelligence. Because the future is built where no path has been drawn yet. Let me be clear. The state will not and should not replace market mechanism, but should support forward-looking projects, the results of which, especially those postponed in time, are important for the strategic interest of the state. But in a world of geopolitical tension, the state must support strategic innovation, such technologies that strengthen both security and economic advancement. The synergy between public, private, and EU funding enables effective use of R&D funds, increasing the innovativeness of the economy. I wish you very fruitful discussion and valuable connections during today's forum. Thank you.
Yeah, so good morning, everyone, also from my side. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Antje Kepler. I'm here as chair of ERIC Forum. And it's really my pleasure to host and open today the second panel of this third ESFRI Stakeholder Forum. I think this morning, José Luis, you said it's a complex day. I think you gave us a complex task with the second panel. And personally, as someone working as a distributed research infrastructure, I can assure you that we really see every day the enormous potential we can unlock, by opening up national investments under the umbrella of European research infrastructures. But I also see every day, also especially when I talk to the colleagues in ERIC Forum, the structural challenges that we all face when it comes to the long-term sustainable funding. And I think, Ellen, you just made a very important point in your presentation about this. I was delighted to see when the European Union published their ERA policy agenda for the next years to come, that they have put European research infrastructures as the second priority here. And I would also like to mention the ESFRI funding report that was published in January this year, that was identifying the challenges that we're looking at in the research infrastructures. And I think also, again, Ellen, you just pointed out several of these items. So there's, of course, the fragmentation across the life cycle that you demonstrated on your slide, especially when it comes to operation and access, because that is the long-term period that when you start building the infrastructure, you sometimes forget about. Then there's the insufficient visibility when it comes on the national and EU level funding streams, and I hope we will discuss a lot in the panel in the next 45 minutes about coordination, coordination, and coordination. And this is particularly true for the distributed research infrastructures. Again, while we are able to bring those investments that you have already made at the national levels and open them up to everyone in Europe and beyond, there's a real vulnerability due to the variable national support that we have at the nodes, and also an uneven capacity to recover the access costs and a lack of shared planning. So again, coordination is what we need. So there are promising examples of synergies, and I'm looking forward to hear hopefully one or two from the panelists. And today's panel, I also want to invite you to look beyond the fragmentation and the project-based funding. And we would like together address the topics of how we can leverage synergies between national, regional, and EU instruments, diversify the funding sources beyond what we traditionally are using, while keeping the publicly funded research infrastructures open and accessible for the European researchers, and also ensure that the infrastructures are supported throughout the full life cycle. So I'm now looking forward to invite the 5 panelists here to the front. So we have Jacob Slashetko, who's the director of the Solaris Center and under Sarek Eric. We have Tao Chang, who's the director for infrastructure and major programs at the Arts and Humanities Research Council in UK. We have Agnieszka Dominczak, who's the vice rector for research at the Warsaw School of Economics, as well as deputy managing director of Share Eric. We have Mrs. Mary McKay, who's the director general of science and parliamentary infrastructure branch in Canada. And of course, Ellen, as vice chair of ERIC Forum and director general of Eli ERIC. So we have prepared a few questions. I would like to remind the panelists once more to be concise, as instead of 3, we have 5 questions. And we want, of course, to give you some time to also ask your questions to the panel afterwards. And the first question goes to Tao and Agnieszka. How can we better align national funding strategies and EU-level instruments to support the full life cycle of research infrastructures? So that's the $1 billion question on this one.
I'm going to be very honest and lay my cards on the table. When I first saw this question, my heart sank, because I don't know enough or barely anything about European funding streams. So I'm going to be very mischievous and instead pivot the question to an area that I do understand and offer this up as an example and case study of how one instance where the UK has tried to synergize and coordinate funding streams. The research infrastructure I'm going to talk about is called COSTAR. It's Convergent Screen Technologies and Performance in Real Time, which means nothing. What it is a distributed 5-site national capability to applied research in virtual production technologies. So all the things that you use, all the R's, XR and AR and VR, and the point where liveness and live performance intersects with technology. It's led by the Arts and Humanities Research Council, and it's part of the UK's broader strategy to grow its creative industries sector, which is currently contributing about 126 billion GVA, gross value add, to the economy. It's funded, at the moment, there are two sets or two streams of funding, or three, I suppose you could say. We've had 75.6 million over the next 5 years from UKRI's Infrastructure Fund, which is a fund that provides support for preparation and also for construction and decommissioning, but not for operations, which means that we've had to think very, very carefully and very strategically about sustainability, the operations section of the life cycle, from the outset. The case that we made was that creative industries, and the gap that we were addressing is that the creative industries appears to be very vibrant and successful within the UK, but it is in fact extremely fragmented. So it's mostly comprised of small enterprises, very, very sometimes micro businesses, and they don't have the capacity or the access to cutting edge technology. So that was the first gap that we were addressing. The second gap we were addressing was the role of a public funder in de-risking R&D for the private sector, for industry, and giving them the confidence to develop new markets and to grasp new market opportunities. So that was the second objective. In total so far, there have been industry partners from the outset. Against the 75.6 million that we have secured in terms of public funding, we've secured an additional 93 million. And bearing in mind that this started last year, so we're in a 5-year construction phase, 93 million in additional co-investment, of which 84% is actually from the private sector. The remainder is from regional and local development funds and authorities. So that I'm offering that up as a specific case study of where we have sought from the outset to synergize funding streams.
Thank you very much. Agnieszka?
Thank you. Yes, the question is one of the difficult and challenging, especially when we are speaking about social infrastructures that I'm representing. I'm representing SHARE, Survey on Health, Aging and Retirement in Europe. This is basically a survey that covers people 50 plus and provides information that allows to understand how older Europeans, let's say, or 50 plus Europeans are changing in the context of changing world around. Given the demographic developments, it is quite important, but we also have other social infrastructures, so I will take an opportunity to speak on behalf of them. We have a Generations and Gender program, which is on its way to become an ERIC quite soon. It covers people in the working age from 15 until 69, and we have also a new infrastructure which is being developed, guide for children and youth growing up in digital Europe, and European Social Survey. So all the infrastructures have the same approach. We are distributed infrastructures that collect data regularly, and this is very important. We have to visit our respondents quite regularly. In the case of SHARE, every 2 years, our interviewers come to households of people in 27 European countries. Ireland has a separate survey, which is a sister study, so it is more or less the same, plus Israel. So this means that, and we are completely funded from the public sources because of the nature of our data. It's very difficult to be funded from private companies, though they would be willing to do so, but I don't think that it would be a good idea. So basically speaking, we have to generate funding at a scale of around 10 million euro every year, or roughly speaking, to sustain our infrastructure. The good thing about it is that once we collect the data, it is freely available to every researcher that wants to use the data. So we don't have limitations on access, apart from the fact that you have to be a researcher. But that means that combination of, getting this kind of commitment from the government to fund regularly our surveys is a challenge. So this is the first challenge that we face, and from country to country, we see very different approaches. So there are some countries and governments that are understanding that it's not only important to look into technologies and economic development, as the Minister of Finance said, but it's also important to understand the societies. And with the developments that we see in the elections, it becomes more and more important that understanding societies is quite important also to sustain research innovation in all areas. And it's not easy for social infrastructures to do so. So convincing some of the governments that it is important to fund social research and social infrastructures is a challenge. What we do, we try to support each other. So within our survey, not all countries are members of the ERIC, but nevertheless we share our experiences and we try to support those that have difficulties in getting funding to get funding. We also have some support from the European Commission for those countries that do not have national funding to collect the data, but it's also a tricky one because why one country has the support and the other doesn't. So that creates some tensions as well, which are not very easy. So this is the regular data collection. We also strive for innovations. We have to change our survey. It's not that we come with the same questions every time. We have to add new things. Also responding to the new development, like the issue of cognitive aging, for example. And it is a tricky part as well, because up till now, we mainly funded our innovations through additional grants, research grants from the European Commission. But this money is really becoming tight, as we all know in all our research infrastructure. So we compete with each other. And of course, it's a friendly competition, but a competition. And again, finding resources to pursue with innovations is quite difficult. And and definitely it's not something that is easy to get on the national level. So there are many challenges. The good thing is that up till now we have managed to sustain our infrastructure, pursue that forward despite those funding challenges. But nevertheless, I wanted to point out that it's very important to see the social infrastructures as ones that require continuous support and ones that provide a lot of insight on the developments that affect our world, because when we think about the population aging and population developments, this is something that affects our economies quite significantly. The fertility levels, how many people of working age are there, how we develop talents, this all is based on demography. So it is to understand that without people, without societies, there would be no technology, no development, and no innovation.
Thank you very much. So what we just heard is that you can leverage quite a lot of private and additional investment through public funding, as we had learned from Tao, but then also helping each other across different research infrastructures from exchange of experiences, while there is a friendly competition, and I think many of the scientific cluster represented here can sign up to that one. We move on to the second question because we have little time. What are the most promising examples where we have effective synergy across funding sources seen that have supported research infrastructures at national or regional level, and what made them work? Jacob, I would like to start with you, and then Ellen, back to you.
So, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I would just two sentences regarding the first question, if I may, because I think it's extremely important also in connection to what Alan says. I mean, and maybe this should be bring to the breakout sessions. The structural funds, I think they have to be reshaped really, so they support first the international collaboration, which is almost impossible, and full life cycle operation. And I think I don't have a clear answer to that, but I think the structural funds is a key area we should reshape for the future. Now, regarding the synergies, Solaris, it's working, or it's very effectively engaged in different consortia, and one of those consortia is the CERIC consortium, and which is a Central European Research Infrastructure Consortium, and Solaris is contributing to that in the two ways, or Poland is contributing into two ways. So one way is in-kind contribution, which is just 10% of the beam time we are providing to the consortium, and there is a fee paid by the Ministry of Science to support it. And actually the CERIC is really unique combination of research infrastructure, because it has under its umbrella large-scale facilities like Solaris or like ELETRA, but also includes small laboratories, small specialized laboratories that are distributed across different countries. And this makes a very good or very efficient use of the scientific capability and very efficient use of the funds that are used for these facilities to achieve common scientific goals set by the consortium. What's very important with the CERIC is that its operational support is within its core budget. So especially regarding the user mobility. So CERIC actually provides the support for the user travels year by year, and there is no time constraints or the project oriented goals constraints regarding the support, which usually we have with the transnational access programs. And of course, the transnational access are very important elements of supporting the users. But of course, they are limited by the time and by the project-specific goals. And in this sense, I should really emphasize that the CERIC sets really new standards, making like constant and secured support for the user access to the facilities with different fund streams, right? Because they come like we have in-kind contributions, we have fees from the countries, and so on. And the second example I would like to emphasize, Solaris is also a part of the consortium LEAPS, which is a research infrastructure consortium, which is a league of the European accelerator-based photon sources. And now if you look on this structure, the entire consortium and all the infrastructures which are inside, which is 16 centers that drive all the synchrotrons and all the lasers, free electron lasers in the Europe, they are operated by the national funds, right? So they are just driven on the daily operation. User services are made by the national funding schemes. But now the LEAPS consortium as a whole, it attracts very important projects from the European level to make an upgrade, to make a new development, to level up the technologies. And now, if you see on this combination, these projects, and we have several of them, now the deliverable of these projects, now they are brought back to the national level. Okay, so I think it's a very nice synergy. So the workflow is there. We can just definitively say there is not enough investments in that, right? So we are a little bit, our consortium, it's expecting much more bigger investments because we're really a big part of the technological infrastructure of the Europe. So, but the work is set there. So this is kind of the synergy I think we can be proud of. We work on that, and yeah, that's all from my side on that subject.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I said a lot already, but I think one of the things that's been, I mean, there's a few streams. I mean, if you think about it, I showed on my slide, member states are funding a lot, especially when it comes to construction or standing up different research infrastructures. That's obviously effective in that we have them. I think one of the things that that somehow when a new organization or potential organization, which has already been funded maybe through European funding, through a project, now wants to be a new research infrastructure or a new entity or something like that, I think there's this idea that if you get on the ESFRI roadmap, then suddenly the rain, you know, it will rain down funding from everywhere. I think, you know, we need to think a lot about consolidation because again, the idea of fragmentation, why is fragmentation bad? Because it doesn't give us critical mass in certain areas, which doesn't help us achieve strategic goals. So that kind of sequence of thinking, any kind of project funding that helps with that. I mean, I have mixed feelings. Some of you will also have mixed feelings about the EOSC funding. However, I have to say it's been extremely effective in bringing clusters together. It's definitely stimulated communities together. It means coordinated efforts across pretty disparate communities. Again, I think this is something that, it needs to change now because of the life cycle of EOSC, but it's been very effective so far in getting the communities moving in a certain direction and moving towards an open science cloud. So I think this has been somewhat quite successful. I think going forward, I mentioned in my slides earlier, access equals excellence. Research infrastructure, operational cost translates to access. That's what it means. If you're paying for operations, you're paying for access. How you coordinate and what are the modalities of the access, that's a different question. But basically, you're paying for access. Who's paying? So member states are typically paying. They're paying for access in almost all cases for all European scientists to be able to approach pan-European research infrastructures, but it's being paid through member states. I think that model's broken, and many of you I've said that to personally, and we've talked about this in other forums. I don't think it works well because there's a free rider problem. Some countries just don't really contribute very much to research infrastructures, but they still have users coming in, and basically, even so, it still doesn't allow us to be able to coordinate on a European level. So I think having a mixed model where there's a mix of member state contributions for operations and also the Commission, as I pointed out earlier, that take on a certain role in co-funding access, and I think Michael mentioned yesterday, where did transnational access go? I mean, it was a very successful in some ways. In some cases, it wasn't successful, but probably because it wasn't coordinated well enough. And so I think in those cases, the Commission as a central role, guided by ESFRI, guided by other organizations that are member state centric, can be a way to guide us towards strategic goals. I think EIC grants could definitely be really clearly defined more to provide access for small and medium sized and large companies to use that money to access research infrastructures. Basically, proprietary access being funded through the Commission. This will help to replace or fill in the gap where we don't have equity funding and private funding in Europe. So those are kind of really things that don't even require a big revolution, but just require probably some tweaking of the language in the next framework program that could help a lot in terms of synergizing the different contributions. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Alan. I think Jacob made a very important point also about having an access fund at the level of the research infrastructure that you're providing in CEREC, Eric, because that can make all the difference. And maybe also something where there's a low-hanging fruit of synergizing member state funding by the members that are already running the research infrastructures. You have already prioritized that research infrastructure. Why not add on that funding for access as well? Because that is often has less overhead linked to it than a lot of the EU funding that we get for TNA, transnational access. I would like to move on to question 3, which is also about research access, but also then the broader societal roles that research infrastructures are increasingly contributing to. So how can we build funding models to answer to that, where we are providing services for public missions and policy goals? And just remember the pandemic, where some of us were really thrown at it to support the European civilization. So any thoughts on this to Alan first, and maybe then to Mary?
I'm just continuing my thoughts a little bit from the previous point. I mean, I think but the difference now is, and that's important, and I said that earlier as well, I think it's very important to be very explicit about the mission that we expect from research infrastructure. We have to say the mission is research excellence and X or Y, because it really creates a lot of cognitive dissonance. I mean, we can talk about it. Everybody knows it. Everybody here who's a manager of research infrastructure knows there's this expectation, but that expectation that you expect results and outcomes on top of a budget that's really only intended for excellence and access. That's the only thing that most of the budgeting we have now is. So bottom line is you still have to have additional, if you want to have business development teams inside of research infrastructures, they cost money. You can't really expect, especially in the startup phase, that they're just going to survive off the market. It's not happening. Hasn't happened in 25 years. So I think that's important. If there are other kinds of societal expectations, for example, in humanities and social sciences where it's not industry focused, but it's maybe more public policy focused, that should be explicit, and we should feel comfortable with increasing the funding, because if they're not doing that, who's going to do that? I mean, you can very clearly look and see. You can look in my home country, the US, and you can see who's collecting the most information about society today in the US. It's not the public sector, all right? It's the private sector, right? And they're using that data to monetize it, and it's now the big thing, right? So if that's where we want to go, then we can go that way, but that data won't be open. You know, there's no telling how much data Google knows about society. How much do they actually share with us, right? So I think these are important things as part of European values, and I think it's something that that we should be explicit about and just value that and say, yes, that's what we want to pay for.
Is this on? I think. So I just wanted to open up by saying thank you so much for the warm welcome and for including us in this event. It's been really wonderful to meet so many of you. I'm bringing a Canadian perspective, which doesn't feel like the European perspective at all. As you well know, we're much larger in size, smaller in population. We fit in Poland. You know, we're well aware of that. But I think from this question's perspective, a famous Canadian once said, you never know what you've got till it's gone. And so in the context of COVID, we didn't have manufacturing capacity for vaccines. We were completely dependent on other countries who, given the current condition of the globe, we can be less dependent on now more so than ever. So we had a top-down approach for a biomanufacturing strategy, which was funded from the government of Canada for $2 billion. And then our partners at CFI, Sylvain is here, the president of the Canadian Foundation for Innovation. They pulled together industry and they pulled together partners across the country, and they built a strategy, and suddenly we can make vaccines again. This was an incredibly important moment born out of crisis. And then like a fog rolling back into the ocean, it dissipated. And so I would say one thing that we're learning in Canada and another piece of work that our colleagues are leading at Industry Canada with the CFI and others is a major facilities framework to look at how we're going to be supporting our major research infrastructure across the country, from design to implementation operations, because we forgot about that part for a while, and into decommissioning. Capital assets, from a Canadian government perspective, we're really good at, making big investments in, say, large security infrastructure. There's a plane or F-35s. Do we think about maintaining them after we bought them? Maybe not, but we're getting better at that. I think there's an excellent opportunity here amongst the partners in the room, member nations, and your research infrastructure to think really critically about, can we do everything at once, and should we? And if we have an asset in Canada and you would like to use it, we would like to invite you to come. And similarly, we would like an invitation in return, because getting to be the best at every type of infrastructure seems fiscally imprudent. And the life cycle that Alan has so capably brought forward in that slide, that rolling fiscal drain, is going to be even increased in strain as we see so many defense and security budgets being increased. Where is that money coming from? It's got to come from somewhere. So I think that there's a great opportunity, and why we were interested in being here is to see where partnerships could flourish, where we could spell each other off. And we do have major assets of a science nature in Canada, Snow Lab being one of the more interesting ones. It's, if anybody wants to climb 2 kilometers underground, I highly recommend it if you like dark spaces. But we'd love to talk more about partnerships, and also about sharing what we're working on doing in terms of asset maintenance, upgrades, and replacement, or not replacement. In fact, accreditation between the two countries, where we could share our researchers back and forth. It's a great place to come if you haven't come to visit, and we open the invitation to all in the room. Thanks.
You can keep the microphone.
I wanted just to add one example of how it is important to have a developed and running social infrastructure. And it is the COVID example. When COVID started, we were actually in the field with our Wave 8. We had to stop it because face-to-face interviews were not possible. But we, thanks to the fact that we have a research infrastructure and we have the network of researchers working on the tools, we did manage to develop very quickly a questionnaire that was implemented through the telephone interview to our panel respondents in 2 consecutive years, using also some support from the European funding. And that means that we were managing to get our hands on societal developments due to the COVID pandemic, including the non-intended social consequences and also post-COVID consequences, as with the longitudinal panel, we follow up our respondents after COVID, after pandemic. So this shows that having an infrastructure that is running and capable really enables to provide insights in what happens in society.
Absolutely, and I think it also points back to what Mary, what you just said. I think we too often take these outcomes for granted, and that we're expecting this takes place anyway in the back, even if I just assume the data will be there, but that you do need the infrastructure, that you do need the resources, and then especially the experts that can do the job, even under extreme circumstances sometimes. That's not for granted, and we are really working hard for it, I think, in the research infrastructure domain. And it brings me to that question about human resources. So how can funding synergies be used to address chronic underfunding of human resources? I think that's a problem that we have both in Europe and in Canada. And any suggestions, ideas, how we can approach this, maybe also together?
This is a great question. I would say two things. One, the narrative on results based on investment seems to be difficult to find. Not even ChatGPT could give me a really great answer about that in Canada, and I tried. So I would say that there's a lot of opportunity, not just to find the research capacity, but also the talent and capacity to tell the story. Without that, you have a hard time making a political argument, in my experience. I would say in Canada, we have a disparate number of talent and capacity building funds right across the country. Are any of them particularly connected? No, not from a results perspective and not from kind of a fiscal allocation perspective. So we have work to do there, which I see a lot of similarities, particularly in the report that you produced, the funding of research infrastructure, the ESFRI report. There's an echo with what's going on in Canada. There's a great opportunity to trade research talent back and forth, to train it, to develop the capacity around it. Our granting councils are very well funded for that purpose, between fellowships and training and welcoming researchers into academic communities there. And just lastly, because I'm going to try to be brief, on the operating costs, I come from Laboratories Canada and the federal government, which is about modernizing the federal laboratory infrastructure. Over 2,500 assets. We have a $4 billion program fully subscribed at this point because most of our infrastructure was built sometime after 1950. And none of it seems to be working for the science that needs to happen, which is a lot about public safety, security, sovereignty, and economic development. Seems like something we should be investing in. And I think from an operating perspective, we put a lot of money up front into the capital investment. The operating stuff falls to the wayside. But the sticker shock about the operating investment and the capital investment is real, given the prioritization of security funding right now, going into a new government and saying, hey, this is going to be $1 billion just to build it. And then it's going to be at least $35 million to operate it every year. And that is a very difficult conversation to have when they need to prioritize things into border security, sovereignty, fentanyl, in our case, because there seems to be some dramatic concern about that across our border. That said, where we could learn from each other, the models that you're putting together, where we could find synergies and frameworks to cross-pollinate talent, to share things like a repeatable labs design framework, which we've built to help bring down operating costs and standardize the footprint of different lab typologies. We're open to sharing those things if anybody's interested. And I would just quickly say, we put a deck together that we're sharing with certain of the members tomorrow about the Canadian perspective, and we'd welcome that deck to be shared with anybody else who is interested in seeing what the landscape looks like in Canada. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. And we move on to Agnieszka. You would also like to take that question?
Yes, I think it's very important that we cooperate together, both between different research disciplines and research areas, and trying to maintain the talents and retain the talents within the research is definitely a challenge that is across the research fields altogether, be it technological, being it science, physical infrastructures, social infrastructures. So I think it's very important to talk together. And when we had a meeting of our national research infrastructure, that was a cross-border topic. So I think we have to act together, also to sort of talk to our policymakers that it is important really to think about research investments in general, investments in sort of developing the young people, retaining young people in research and science, because we compete in a very difficult world with the private market that is extremely attractive. So this is one thing that is important. Again, collaboration between different disciplines, different fields, all band together on board to convince that, I mean, we really need young people. We really need talented PhDs to stay in the research. Within the social research infrastructures, another thing is also I mean, within, I think, each disciplines, but again, as I'm representing social infrastructures, we really need to think, to work together, and there are some examples of countries when there's national collaboration, be it Odyssey in the Netherlands, or in Poland, we actually create a hub for all all the longitudinal surveys, shared GGP and guide to work together, which means that there are some areas in which we can really work on the synergies and support development of our young researchers. So again, collaboration is extremely important between everybody to really maintain the talents and also to use our resources as effectively as possible.
Thank you very much, Agnieszka. I'm a bit mindful of time, but we have one more question to go as we are at the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum. I'm also wondering, how could ESFRI help to ensure that funding synergies for research infrastructures in Europe are planned, predictable, and strategic? Tao. You have again the one.
Me again. Okay, I'm going to be. I'm going to flip this question again slightly. So rather than saying how ESFRI helps, I'm going to provide, I hope, an interesting example of how it already does. I think the ESFRI roadmap provides a point of focus and enables or encourages national level decision making on where to invest and how to invest in national research infrastructure and capability. And because the roadmap gives us a very useful synthesis and point of reference for where priorities seem to be headed in this space across Europe. So an interesting example of this is the fairly newly established ERIC, which joined the ESFRI roadmap in 2016. This is the European Research Infrastructure for Heritage Science, ERIS. It directly informed the formation and eventual sort of establishment of the UK's national capability for conservation and heritage science. We've called it RICHES, Research Infrastructure for Conservation and Heritage Science. This is an £80 million investment over the next 5 years for construction, with 31 sites across the UK. And I would say that where the points of synergy are is that ESFRI and ERIS offers an opportunity for the UK to make a decision, to immediately amplify our impact and visibility in this particular field. So I think I'm going to be quite brief, but I'm very happy to share additional information later.
Thanks a lot. Jacob.
Yeah, I will stay within the road mapping little bit area, but just to emphasize what I still believe there is a room for improvement is to work a little bit more effectively on aligning the roadmap from the ESFRI perspective down to the national levels. Because I think this process it's not really efficient, and these roadmaps that are constructed on the national levels are not really well aligned with the ESFRI strategies. So definitively ESFRI has here a role and has the structural opportunity to communicate between the national and the European levels, also private sectors, to try to maintain this bidirectional communication, you know, so shouldn't be one direction, but should be in two directions, so that this roadmaps regarding the pan-European strategy and down to the national levels are a little bit better aligned. And the other option, not option, but maybe area regarding the road mapping, I think ESFRI could consider also to better explore. The roadmaps also are constructed by the research consortia. Okay, so again, I'm getting back to the LEAPS. Actually, the LEAPS, it's making continuous road mapping processes. And actually, this voice of LEAPS is actually heard at ESFRI because we are lucky we have two infrastructures. So we have the European EXFEL and we have European Secretarial Radiation Facility, which are the landmarks of the ESFRI. So we're a little bit in the, good position so that this road mapping we are doing within the research infrastructure, our consortium, is reflected somehow in the ESFRI. But I think this doesn't concern all road mapping processes that are happening across Europe. So maybe that's a little bit that one can take into account. Thank you.
There was one other point I would add at the very end is I think, we say if you want to manage a problem, you have to measure it. And I think one thing that ESFRI could definitely do, and you have the perfect chair for this because he's so financially and accounting minded, I think we need to quantify how much we're spending on research infrastructures. We need to have, I gave you a number earlier. I said 10, 11 billion is being spent. I mean, I had to have 2 people searching that information for 2 weeks to be able to compile that. Should not be like that. We should know exactly, also in the ERICS, also in ESFRI, how much are we spending exactly and what are the sources of funding. So simply an accounting in order to be able to make decisions about that. And I understand that in distributed research infrastructures, not everybody can valorize their contributions. I get it. I've been working in this field for quite some time. It can be done. In-kind contributions can certainly be valued. There's a way to do it. And I think that's a very important step that's not hard. It's not rocket science. We simply need to put an accounting together and understand how much are we spending and because otherwise how are we going to advocate for, resources and funding if we don't even know how much we're spending collectively?
We probably could discuss for another 30 minutes on how difficult it is indeed for distributed research infrastructures. But I would like to conclude here and just a few words because I think we often have the tendency to look at what we do not have in the research infrastructure ecosystem. I think we see a lot of existing coordination, collaboration, and I would also call it friendship, as Agnieszka pointed it out earlier here. It happens at the research infrastructure side. I think all of us know each other quite well. We know our partners in the distributed research infrastructures across Europe. And I think we also understand very well our challenges, bottlenecks, limitations. And I would really like to invite the national funders in the member states and maybe also the European Commission to talk within their own institutions more openly about what we have, what we're providing here, what are those challenges. Because what I often see is a lack of horizontal communication back home in the ministries. And that I think would automatically lead to more understanding and transparency of what is actually funded, who could fund what, and then increase the synergy of different funding sources at all different levels. So that would be my concluding remark, and I would like to thank the panelists once more for this exciting journey. José Luis for his courage to throw this topic at us. Thank you very much also to the audience to stay with us. We're a bit over time, but I hope we can still have a sufficient long coffee break.
Okay, thank you very much. We now go to the final steps of this workshop, but before, or just in the last step, we have a proposition to do some kind of common exercise, and if I understood properly, could be even a prize or something like that, but I give the floor to our colleagues from Stress ESFRI to tell us what is really the next step of this quiz.
Hello, welcome back everyone. It's our Stress-free team here, so it's time to test our memory, to test our local knowledge probably, and we are going to play our favorite quiz game.
Woohoo!
So for those jumping in for first time in a Slido game, you can visit at slido.com, join at slido.com, and then you can put the password 3681768.
You can also use the QR code.
Come on, we see some first names in the screen. This will be quick, fun, and of course a little bit competitive because we have a special gift for you.
We have a prize for the winner.
For the winner.
Only for the winner. Just one prize.
You are going to earn points but for the correct answers, but you have to somehow beat a little bit fast on your answers.
We're going to have 10 questions.
Almost
10,
yes.
You will have 4 options each,
That's right.
and you will have to choose between 4 options. You gain points according to your
Memory,
speed,
and
that's the word.
and your knowledge here in Kraków. So let's see in a few minutes who has been paying attention today. and
yesterday.
Yeah. So we have so far 56 people.
Okay, maybe we can start.
Shall we wait 1 minute yet? A few seconds?
Is everyone trying to connect? Should we wait for someone? Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay, we are starting. First question. When was ESFRI established? We have 5 options.
Think fast.
Think very fast.
Answer faster.
The right answer was 2002. Only the 65%.
Nice. Let's go to the second question. How many chairs did ESFRI have until today? 5, 7, 8, or 10?
Huh.
And the correct answer is 10. Only the third.
Only the 30%.
That was tough. Let's go to the next question.
This is easy. This is very easy. When will the next roadmap be published? 2021, 25, 26, or 28? The next roadmap. Okay. Not perfect, but okay, good. The right answer is 2026.
So far, we have Claire in the first position.
Good job. Then Anna.
Anna and Christoph.
Who's Anna? No, Anna from Stress-Free. And then, okay, Christoph. Okay, we can go on.
Okay, let's go. Where will ECRI 2026 take place? Turkey, Italy, South Korea, Ireland.
This is a more general question about research infrastructure environment. What is ECRI? Exactly. Italy. That's true. Next one. How many landmarks are included in ESFRI Roadmap 2021? This is not easy, 18, 25, 41, or 55?
No worries if you got it wrong. Just call it a learning outcome from today's event.
And the right answer is 41. Okay, the chair got it right.
How many are operational?
What is the name of the castle in Kraków? That's a local one. The Haunted Castle, Vaslov, Malbork, Wawel.
And the right answer is Wawel.
Wawel, that's right.
Wawel.
69%.
69%.
That's a good one.
Yes, it's a good one.
We have a lot of well-prepared people.
Who set up the sustainability context for the meetup yesterday? Jose Luis Martinez, Jan Kruzak, Elena Offert, and Michael Arentoft. Here we can see if you paid attention.
Yes, you can use you can use your force or the notes from earlier.
And the right answer is Elena Offert.
So far,
Anna is in the first position. Can Anna win the prize? I don't think so. Then we have
She doesn't know the
Christophe and then
questions.
Claire. The same three people, huh?
Yes, Anna, Christophe, and Claire.
Okay, we can go on.
Yes, next question. Where did the second ESFRI Stakeholders Meetup take place? Brussels, Madrid, Tenerife, or Milan?
And the right one was Tenerife.
73%.
Which color was not used as a breakout room identifier? Green, orange, blue, or purple?
That's a good one.
Is a good one? Oh. The blue. We still have 2 more questions. How many people actually participated in this meetup?
As always in the research, hypothesis first, then test it. So let's see.
Ah.
We have 2 more questions. Anna, it's
Anna
still
still on
in
the
first.
top.
And
We have
Tadas.
who's Tadas? We have a new entry. We don't know.
So, our last 2 questions for the big winner. When was Jagiellonian University founded?
This is quite easy.
That's right.
That's right. And the last one, which one of the entities below was not represented at the panel yesterday? That's right, Eli, Eric.
So,
Let's see
who is the winner?
who is the winner. Could be Anna. Yes, I think it's Anna. Anna! Good job. Do we have the prize?
Yes, I do have the prize.
We have the prize. So Anna, please come here and get your prize.
We are going to share the gift with Anna. I have
Me?
I have a photo with her.
Okay, I can take your photo. Good job, Anna. You paid a lot of
Congratulations, Anna.
attention.
10 to 12. 10 to 12 right answers.
Apparently, there are no conflict of interest.
I promise I didn't know anything.
This is why.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think now we have to proceed very quickly because we have quite a long delay. I don't think that you want to escape the lunch or not totally the lunch. So now we have to go through the feedback from the different breakout sessions. So I ask the 5 persons who will present that to do as quick as possible. I understand that we need some time, but let's try to do as quick as possible because we have some delay. I don't know if we will continue with the order of yesterday, and we start by the red. So, who is the red one? Elena?
Because you didn't need to speak about the order of the yesterday.
No, I was asking, I don't know if we will continue with the same order of yesterday.
So this is the message which I kept in my mind. Yes, exactly. Okay, so okay, I will try to be quick. So in our group, we discussed a lot of things, but so we tried to summarize with Melania the main points in order to be short and constructive. So we decided to start with good examples because well, it's always good to remember that the things are functioning. Actually, it's not because we are always speaking about difficulties then that we have difficulties everywhere. We have good examples of synergies and funding streams which exist. For example, we had an example from Finland. They involve research infrastructures in the strategic dialogue at regional levels, for example. Decisions on different regional funds are taken in discussion on regular basis with universities, local councils, and so on. You know what, now I realize that we don't have the questions in front of us, but as you all participated in the group, you remember the questions were about the synergies of different fundings, the ways how we can better align the fundings, and there was a question in the end about what ESFRI can do in order to help. So we don't have questions, but we have the answers here, okay? So the idea is to involve research infrastructures into the strategic discussions from the very beginning. How to do it? It certainly depends on the organization in each country, but kind of meetings, stakeholder meetings at national levels, local levels with research infrastructures can be really useful in order to align different fundings which are received by research infrastructures, and also for the decisions at the national level. Another point which is interesting is that, well, funders and decision makers actually have a tendency to privilege somehow physical research infrastructures, and the ideas and the needs of the digital research infrastructures, data research infrastructures, are not always really taken into account. So something should be done to attract attention to this type of research infrastructures, because this is something new in our landscape. Physical research infrastructures are more established and more traditional ones. But in these data research infrastructures, we need to pay attention at people, we need to invest in people, and we need to invest in the development of their skills. And also, in order to attract more attention in general to the research infrastructures and to provide better synergy of different funding sources, it can be useful also to make reference to the use and access to research infrastructures in different European programs, like widening programs, Marie Curie schemes, others. Well, we are always speaking about Pillar 2, where we should make reference to research infrastructures. So this is really important, to speak about the existence of research infrastructures, to give the examples of them, so that people would know them, researchers would know them better and would use them better. And this would also somehow catalyze the usage of different funding sources. And the second block of points is more heterogeneous, actually. What we discussed is that when we speak about research infrastructures, it can be really useful to show the value generated by research infrastructures. Because research infrastructures, we invest a lot in research infrastructures, but when we speak about the benefit that research infrastructures bring, it is multiplied by several numbers, actually. And today we have difficulties to estimate this multiplicator effect of research infrastructures towards the general effect from the investments in research. Because these numbers can be really very high and can be really very surprising. And we need maybe to learn how to do it. It hasn't been done till now, but the value generated by research infrastructures can be really a very useful indicator. And in order to help to do that, we can, for example, suggest to have some European calls for the research infrastructures from different fields, which could help the research infrastructures to count or to assess the socio-economic and societal impact which they produce. We had an example of a repath call. It was a very successful and useful project, and since then we didn't have any continuation. So what was discussed in the group is that this kind of approach can be really useful for the research infrastructures in different fields in order to learn and to know the tools which they can use. Another point concerns the necessity of coordination in funding of national loads, because I'm sorry, because concerning the European funding, it's it's not always very transparent and very clear, but at least it's known. We know the work programs, we know the framework programs, but concerning the local funding, sometimes we really need more transparency, we really need more coordination in funding of national nodes. So in this case, certainly the strategic documents like roadmaps or other strategic documents can be very useful for different countries. These documents can facilitate the dialogue between different decision makers and funders, and in particular different ministries when, for example, research infrastructures are followed by different ministries in the same country. And again, we repeat the point from yesterday, because in this discussion it's also very appropriate that public missions like, for example, ocean observations, you know that there is an ocean summit in Nice which started this week. It's a very important challenge, our European and actually global challenge. These kind of missions can be taken over, or can be at least also supported by additional European funds, dedicated European funds, not only from, which would not come only from research and innovation envelope, but from other European schemes. And actually, this is all what I wanted to tell you. Thank you.
Who is the next? Orange. Who was in the orange group? Nelia.
Okay, thank you. I'll be very quick. So basically, we had a more or less kind of the same kind of a discussions also like the last group, but I will summarize our talk into the, let's say, five points. So we discussed the 1 and 2 questions together. So main thing is the communication. Take the correct stakeholders into a play when you kind of find the solutions how to fund these facilities. There's a difference whether you are distributed, single-sided, in which phase of the life cycle the facility is when you kind of design and invest in sort of invent your sort of a business models. How can I actually move on? So basically, okay, this is not mine. This is something else. Sorry, how do I kind of... okay, no worries, I will continue. So basically, communicate with the correct stakeholders. That was one message. The second one is that the transnational access funding is very, very important. I have to be that our group stressed that once again. And in that relation to that, the new co-funding mechanism that there is regarding to transnational access funding, it's been a bit difficult because for the countries, the member state, it came with kind of a quickly, and the member countries are not ready and prepared for the 20% share. They don't have the processes. So our sort of a message was that when you kind of renew processes, then member countries need more time to adapt. And then I move to the last point that we had the ESFRI. It's this one. Okay, yes. So the message is to ESFRI. So ESFRI delegates should work as ambassadors of ESFRI in their own countries. Because again, the communication. And ESFRI should continue to develop the European RI landscape like it's doing now. It should guarantee that the projects are mature enough and sensible to invest in them. That's sort of a message for the member states that are regarding that as a good procedure. And also, the ESFRI should remove sort of a project that are not probably meeting up the criteria from the roadmap or not sort of regarding them as a landmark. And that is one thing, just to sort of actively develop the landscape. And the final point here is that also now we are living a bit in a different world. So ESFRI and RI should recognize the current geopolitical situation regarding for instance, the data and research security. So this kind of defense and dual use of developed technologies are kind of current operations of quite many of the research infrastructures. So one suggestion was that the ESFRI could offer a workshop on data and research security and the dual use in future. And one more thing coming to the landscape, developing the landscape, the RIs would really welcome if ESFRI could provide a platform where RIs can discuss about the landscape, the current RIs, whether they can provide the services for the coming needs, or whether there is really a need to create a new research infrastructure. So take the research infrastructures in the work when the landscape is developed. Thank you. I finish off with this.
Oh, pink. Pink is not me.
Good, sorry. Yeah, so now I know that can. So this time we managed to go through all 5 questions, but we started still with the 5th. So but nevertheless, here we start off with number 1. So align national funding strategies. Okay. So we should actually recognize that it might not be possible to align all funding streams. So we should better learn how to live with non-aligned funding. Nevertheless, RIs should, and we heard that also before, should become more proactive also in going to governments and talking to them, and not only talking about funding needs, but also the alignment of policy priorities and how to align at least some aspects of the funding, which are important for them at national level, for instance. Then we should not ignore the larger context. The keywords here are technology infrastructures, ethics, and that also here at the national level there's alignment needed because they might be dealt with at different ministries. With question number 2, the promising examples, we just remind you of the example given by the UK in the panel by Tao Chang about the creative industries. So then the share infrastructure, the SSH area, they said that they had a quite successful combination of local funding, also national funding for the it's a distributed infrastructure. So national funding for the a hub, and then a local funding for the national data collection. They were also using EU funding and, well, also US funding, though there is now a question mark behind that last aspect. Then there was also the idea of, okay, you could also use from charities, for instance, but then we have, there might be ethical problems or ethical issues, also with the independence of the research related done. And so then we heard that before, ESFRI could help in discussing what activities to stop, so research activities to stop, and which activities to continue in view of, say, constant budget available. The third question about public missions and policy goals. Here again, research infrastructures should themselves assess how they can contribute to specific missions and policy goals, and what the resources they have to contribute, and what they might need, and also what kind of flexibility they need to address these goals or to contribute. They would like to have more predictability regarding long-term funding, and a better mix of Pillar 1 and 2 of the Horizon Europe. And as policy goals are very often transient, we come back to the proactive RIs who should also try to actually formulate policy goals. And now, next one, so 2 last questions. Number 4, funding synergies to address chronic underfunding. So what's, and the HR, so we were more talking about HR here, 2 points at least. Improve the mobility of RI staff, of RI staff. So the keywords here are the benefits which they might have accumulated, might lose when they move to another research infrastructure in another country, and pensions. So we have, of course, there's the Resaver initiative, but there might be other issues. And then governments should prioritize funding, so not spreading it out thinly across all research infrastructures, but ensure that the critical mass in terms of funding is met. Need of prioritization. And it was noted that the largest synergies in terms of human resource are with universities, and there needs to be a stronger interaction between research infrastructures and universities. And again, the need for coordination about ethics at government level. And the last question, how could ESFRI help ensure that funding synergies are planned, predictable, and so on? So ESFRI could coordinate better with ERIC, EOSC, and the IRO Forum. And it was pointed out, was usefulness of the landscape analysis and roadmap. We had that before. Then the ESFRI is seen as a bridge between research infrastructures and the funders. And also, we need a better communication, or communicate more towards the European Commission and the Parliament. And we should support national delegations in increasing visibility of RIs. So it's coming back to the ambassador function of ESFRI delegates. But here, not just saying they should do it, but they also need some support in this. And one thing could be, for instance, when you do the impact assessment of ESFRI, there could be specific points like what's the benefit of a country which doesn't have any RI to actually finance access of their national users to other RIs in other countries. These could be aspects treated in in an impact assessment, and which could then help these countries to advocate for providing this kind of funding. That's all.
So, colleagues, short debrief from our discussion. Good news is that we managed to prepare slides. The other good message is that I could skip a part of the things to present to you because our discussion was very well aligned with the discussion in Elena's group. So many of the messages presented by Elena came to our discussion table as well, and we have approached them in a very similar way. So I will skip them. And several points are so obvious that even though they are shown in the slides, I can skip them as well. So when discussing the funding strategies and the synergies between national strategies and, let's say, the financial instruments provided largely at the EU level, we decided that a good starting point was Ellen's presentation, and we just saw how we could, building on the scheme he has provided, come to some advice. And one point is that despite of the long-standing discussion on synergies, and we remembered all the past papers and strategic documents that have been developed by ESFRI and others, there is still large space for improvement. And this improvement is, let's say, at the practical and very obvious level in aligning of rules, financial regulations, and things like that. But also, still, there is some improvements possible at the strategic level, at the consideration, let's say, at very early stages of the planning of research infrastructures. And we saw that there is a role for improved, for fostering communication, as it has been again highlighted by Elena, between not only the Commission and the Member States, which is largely done at the ESFRI level, but there is still space for improvement of strategic discussions between the different actors in the broader, let's say, research infrastructure domain, because similarly, as we have been discussing yesterday, research infrastructures have more and more also broader missions than simply excellent research. And this societal and socio-economic impact must not only be well recognized, but also well presented to the different actors, and a common understanding must be developed. Therefore, it's really essential that all the actors find proper means and platforms to understand each other and discuss in a proper way how to best utilize research infrastructures. We have not gained a clear insight on who shall be responsible for all of this, because the system is very complex, the diversity of the national systems is large, but certainly there is a role for the Commission, there is a role for the Member States in the different fora as they are existing. And we also saw that research infrastructures in close interplay with ESFRI shall work towards some common strategies. In the question 2, we have not been so clear on identifying examples at different stages and in different research infrastructures, but at a very, very general level, we just discussed that whatever good practice examples might exist, and there are many in the space, and we have tackled several of them, communication is key. And it is really so that we still believe that at all levels, ESFRI included, there is space for improving the way how the role, the impact of research infrastructures is communicated, and probably this would contribute also to, let's say, smoother, sustainable funding of the whole ecosystem as such. There were some minor points listed here, but for sake of time, I will just skip them. This was a question where we had some difficulties because it connected the discussion about, let's say, increasing funding models or better funding models and improving access to researchers and the broader societal roles. This reverted us back to the discussion we have had yesterday, and there were some flashbacks on this. Again, it's absolutely fundamental that we revise a little bit our understanding of the mission of research infrastructures, not as providers only of excellent science, providing services to researchers and facilitating the science, but also contributing, let's say, to these social missions. There were examples brought from the environmental domain, there were examples brought from the health domain. We have been discussing societal infrastructures and their missions and their contribution, let's say, to policy development, to cross-sectorial strategies, to let's say, providing fundamental data sets that can then allow merit-based political decisions across sectors. I'm not sure I'm going in the right direction. Okay, the slide shows that I shall stop here because I'm using my time already to an extent which was not planned. But we had also a quite intense discussion on the role ESFRI shall play. If you just could go to the last slide, because I don't know which one is it. ESFRI shall play. And here it was also clear from the discussion that ESFRI is somehow victim of its success, and that the expectations that ESFRI can and shall provide to the research infrastructure system ecosystem is much higher than the actual capacities and capabilities ESFRI has. But we still believe that the ESFRI's role in the whole ecosystem shall be reconsidered. ESFRI shall, in a very active way, and it, I think, came in several of the previous sessions as well, engage in communication and increasing visibility of the research infrastructures. It shall accommodate the differences in the different national systems. An idea of an ESFRI roadshow has been brought up. It is really important that, let's say, from the top level, ESFRI develops and contributes to broader understanding of the impact research infrastructure have across not only scientific domains, but across sectorial borders. It is really important that we adopt the idea that research infrastructures are strategic investments that have impact to many sectorial policies and can contribute to them. A lot of things have been said. I have many notes. I will project them in the discussions at the ESFRI level. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. When I said before, we have quite a long delay, so I will try to be very, very brief and to go to the closing remarks. So, but just to give you information about the discussion on the purple group. Actually, we joined mostly question 1 and 2 together. So at the end of the day, well, the different measures appear that really was very clear the discussion that to be an ESFRI roadmap doesn't mean that you have to guarantee the national funding priority. This is a second thing, and it has to be also, let's say, obtained. It's not really granted only because you are in the ESFRI roadmap. And somehow ESFRI has not been to be thinking like a founding agency. It's something different. It's a hub of communication. So I just echo all the previous discussion we had a few minutes ago. And also was some comment about the structural fund, that really the fragmentation of that through the borders of the region also maybe hinder the creation of the network of founding large research infrastructure. This also has to be cared. Are very important, this structural fund, but also this division due to the regional part can be really difficult to manage sometimes. Respect to the third question, actually, I would say the way, I mean, if I understand, is that the really ESFRI and the research, not ESFRI, but the research infrastructure, really in the beginning of ESFRI 2006 was mostly, I will say, research infrastructure related with physics. It was a very clear mandate for during the period of Bienko Rudolf, Beatrix, that really has to expand to different areas, and really where environment and in particular health research infrastructure can in very strongly. And actually that means also for us that really the different ministry portfolio who are really taking care of that should also contribute and will be healthy to contribute to the financial support of big research infrastructure. However, that means at the end of the day, quite a lot of coordination between the different ministry level at the different member states, and also maybe ESFRI has to make an effort and try to coordinate that. Actually, that will be even more important if we think for the future with things related with digital and technology infrastructure. That will be really an effort that has to be done along this line. Respect to the question 4, about, we were mostly thinking about the personnel and grants related with PhD and postdoc. And of course, we will hear the example of the mass plan collaboration with academia, but also, I mean, was different possibilities of a particular program related with industry PhD that would be very important. It could be a good support for the research infrastructure. And I have to be very quick. And just respect to the last question, actually was not really many more ideas, was already has said, but I think one point always came in is really to have data. I mean, I think we echo again Alan's comments on statement. To have data is really very important if we want to really to coordinate, to avoid overlapping, and to have a really an argumentation to the different levels, member state, European Union, industry area, different ministry. We need to have very solid and consolidate data in order to show, in order to demonstrate our argumentation. So actually, this is necessary. So we discuss about possibilities how this data has to be collected, and also not really in one shot, continuously, and because this is very important. And well, was some discussion about the possibility to have more or less a standardization of the data set, and later maybe requested in the annual reports. I'm thinking about the ERIC annual report that has been to submit to the European Commission every year. If we have maybe no one, but maybe two, one for the centralized research infrastructure, one set of the standardized data for the distributed one, these kind of tools will be very important, but also not really to try to ask all the research infrastructure for the different bodies. I'm thinking about ESFRI, I'm thinking about EOS, I'm thinking about ERIC Forum, not really to repeat sequentially the same data or similar data or equivalent data to the research infrastructure. We have to be cautious about that, because that will create a really a problem of rejection, and will be the worst scenario. So we have to deal with ourselves in this kind of body in order to how to exchange data. So that will be very quick summary of our discussion, and I thank all of you for all your attention and participation in this breakout session, who again, like yesterday, was very rich and very fruitful, the discussion. Thank you very much. So now I have to continue here because we are going to the last step of the meeting, and it's really my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Piech, who is really the plenipotentiary of the Marshal of the Malopolska region for entrepreneurship and job market development. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to stress that it's a great pleasure for me to be here today with you on behalf of Mr. Łukasz Smułka, Marshal of the Malopolska region, who unfortunately is unable to attend today's event due to his other very important commitments. But he asked me to read his personal address, his personal letter addressing you and this event, and if you allow me to read it, I would do it very willingly, please. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, on behalf of myself and the self-government of the Malopolska region, I would like to extend my greetings to everyone gathered here for the ceremonial closing of the third ESFRI Stakeholders Forum Meetup. At the same time, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers and participants of this event, which constitutes an important element of the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union and is dedicated to the future of the European Union research infrastructure ecosystem. Małopolska is a region that has undergone a dynamic transformation over the past dozen years. Intensive support for the development of modern technologies, science and entrepreneurship has made Malopolska as a leader in innovation and sustainable development, both in Poland and in the international stage. We have already invested over 7.5 billion Polish zlotys in the development of research and technology, placing Malopolska second in the region, just behind the Mazovia region. Our efforts have also been recognized by the European Commission, which designated us as one of the regional innovation valleys. These numbers and titles represent concrete decisions and tangible support for laboratories, universities, and industrial clusters. As a result, Malopolska has become a place where new ideas not only emerge, but also have the right conditions to fully realize their potential. In Malopolska, we believe that progress begins where diverse resources and ideas come together in common action. Therefore, we place great importance on building a space for exchanging experiences and establishing relationships that lead to the creation of innovative projects. Recently, we have had the opportunity to show that Malopolska not only actively takes part in shaping European innovation policy, but also contributes to real value to it. In the first days of June, right here, in the Auditorium Maximum of the Jagiellonian University, the EU InTech 2025 conference took place, one of the most important events organized within the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union. The conference gathered over 800 participants from all over Europe and beyond, representatives of science, industry, and administration. Innovative ideas and valuable relationships often begin at such events. And in Malopolska, we prove that different stakeholders can build a better future together. Thanking you for your attention, I warmly greet you all and invite to discover Malopolska region. Marshal of Malopolska region, Łukasz Smułka. Once again, esteemed organizers, distinguished participants, guests, I would like to express my gratitude for the invitation, for the possibility and opportunity to take part in this very important event for Malopolska region. We appreciate very much that this event could take place in Kraków, in Malopolska. Please be sure that you are always very welcome in Malopolska region. So already now, I invite you again to Kraków, to Malopolska. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. So I would like now to ask to came to the floor to Professor Marek Stankiewicz. He has been really very much involved in the budget for all the organization, all the effort. So really, we appreciate the work he would to address to you, because we have to thank very much quite a lot of effort they do.
Okay, I was included in the agenda, but we are, let's say, 35 minutes behind the schedule, so I'll be really short. I would like to ask the group of people who have done the real hard job. It is not myself. Please come in. Where is the rest of the guys? Agnieszka. So it's not all of them, but obviously some are missing, some are still doing their job. So this is Joanna, Agnieszka, Michał, and Alek. So once again. So people from Solaris, thank you very much. Now, just a few words from the point of view of the organizer. Local organizer, we organized it obviously on behalf of the Ministry of Science and Higher Education, and we got that job to do, and we are happy. We appreciate presence of representative of the Marshal's Office. We appreciated very much the presence and addresses by the City Hall, Kraków City Hall Office, and by Minister of Finance and by the Ministry of Science and Higher Education, so I appreciated it. And from my point, it is one of the impacts of the research infrastructure. Without Solaris being here, you wouldn't be here probably. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I was to suppose, and I have to do some kind of takeaway message. So this is really difficult because it has been 2 very intense days and many discussions, many fruitful ideas that we knew, new ideas or narrative of the same idea differently, which is really also very important. So I will stay, let's say, a couple of minutes, try to summarize very few ideas because we are too late, but I will say, I remember from yesterday, one of the key factors contributed to the sustainability has been identified during these 2 days. And a strong long-term vision is fundamental for the successful and sustainable operation of the research infrastructure. Beyond the scientific excellence, also the sustainability requires a distinct identity of the project, of the research infrastructure, appropriate legal framework, and a very robust business model. This has been highlighted by Serge Dida, and I think it's very important takeaway message. Another one is with human resources. Human resources are also critical for sustainability. I think Caterina Petrillo emphasized very strongly the importance and the continuous developing of the staff competencies to really transform the research infrastructure from mere service provider to really hub of technological and knowledge innovation. Talent is indispensable for technological advancement, and mechanisms to facilitate the personal exchange between industry, research infrastructure, and I will say also universities, academia, is really very needed. Also, another message, the discussion today focused really on the founding of the research infrastructure. And so founding poses significant challenges. The initial step is really addressing this issue of the ability to quantify it accurately. So again, I'm repeating the same argument that a few minutes before in our panel. It's about the data, the quality of the data, and also the continuity along the time of the data. Understanding the precise mechanisms through which the research infrastructure receives funding is essential before we can effectively coordinate various funding streams. Additionally, issues of the scale present a considerable obstacle. I mean, the fragmentation of the funding resources are insufficient coordination are really impeding the European Union capability to achieve the necessary scale of investment. This was starkly highlighted when we compare the extensive scale, for instance, of Apple investment in China with the more dispersed effort of the various European Union funding instruments that was really pointed out by Alan Weeks this morning. Access to research infrastructure is another important dimension. Why international access really was very important and had fostered very much the collaboration, it maybe require a reevaluation and rethinking for the future. For instance, new funding scheme could really enhance the SME participation, and technology-based access could really complement the current mission based on the model. Tadeusz Ult noted yesterday that the access is particularly vital for young researchers aspiring to launch their own venture. Noted that really, as Tadeusz pointed out yesterday, only 35% of the European researchers are under 40 years today, following the statistics. So finally, I think it's essential to view Europe's diverse research and technology infrastructure as an interconnected ecosystem where distinction between data-driven, digital, research-centric, excellent basic research, and technology-focused infrastructure should be fluid, this connection, and to prevent the creation of artificial barriers that hinder, at the end of the day, collaboration and even competition. Addressing the fragmentation, once again, is crucial. So as expressed by Alan also this morning, today fragmentation of the research infrastructure ecosystem really hinder the European ability to achieve critical mass. So strategic governance, reflecting this holistic perspective, will promote a more coherent and effective development across the European research and innovation ecosystem, who will ensure at the end of the day the long-term sustainability of the expansive research infrastructure landscape. So that was really my takeaway message. And I would like to finish really thanking all of you for your participation, for your engagement, through motivation and discussion. I think we have to take away, thinking about ESFRI, take away this message, try to later discuss that at the level of the member state, the European Union, and we have to try to connect much better research infrastructure with ESFRI and with all the, let's say, these bodies who are really there to serve and to give support to you, to the research infrastructure, which is really the important point. So thank you very much, and also thank you very much to the local organizer. We said yesterday was very good, but Marek was told me wait until the end. So just we arrived to the end. So thank you very much. The organization was really wonderful. Everything was smooth. This housing of the maximum auditorium is really very, very good for this kind of meeting with all the facilities included. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you in the coming fourth stakeholder meeting that will be probably, let's say, in 18 months or something like that, 2 years. So thank you very much.